And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM this Thursday morning. We've got a show for you today. John Hartson is going to help us to preview the Arsenal game tonight. We'll look back a little bit on Real Madrid's victory in Munich last night, which pretty much, you would suspect, sets them up for a place in the final, probably against Liverpool in Kiev. There's a lot of ifs, ands or buts about that. No ifs, ands or buts about our guest today, Alan Quinlan. Good morning to you.
Morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah.
I'm still happy and kind of bouncing around the place after Liverpool the other night. I'm a Liverpool fan, as in case you didn't know. Most
of the Liverpool fans were on a massive downer because of the 2 goals. You think they're grand and they're going to go through?
So I can't see him not scoring in Rome. Can you? To be fair, you never know, and like what Roma did to Barcelona out there certainly will be on everyone's minds. But I think
the difference is that Barcelona team weren't in the form that this current Liverpool team are in. Like, Messi was doing well, but Suarez wasn't the real Suarez.
They weren't clicking. But my big fear about Liverpool is, even though the defence, Van Dijk has made a massive difference, I think there's still a nervousness about the goalkeeper, about Lovren, and making mistakes. But we saw a goalkeeper mistake and panic last night from Real Madrid.
And they recovered from it, though.
Yeah.
Right, I just want to bring this up because it happened on the radio last night. The first thing, if I was Joey Carbery, would be saying, hang on, if you want me to go up there, do you want me to go up to that rubbish? Because I'm not going to get anything out of it. The standard and culture week on week isn't good enough. That was Liam Toland. Now, obviously, I'm doing Liam Toland's voice. He might have been a bit more calm. We'll play the video a little bit later on. Would you want to play it now? We can play it now. Yeah, okay, we'll play it now. So rather than me misrepresenting the facts,
you got to
Toland waiting outside, bringing me down a dark alley and beating me up, we can have a look at it.
I think that I'm reminded of those top-class older quarterbacks in American football. When they're negotiating their recontract, they're more concerned with what's in front of them than the actual pounds and pennies on their contract. In other words, do they have the forwards in front of them that'll make life somewhat easy for them to allow them to perform? And I think the first thing, if I was Joey Carbery, would be saying, hang on, if you want me to go up there, do you want me to go up to that rubbish? Because I'm not going to get anything out of it. The standard and culture for week on week isn't good enough. We see that. And if I've learned anything from the semi-finals, the difference about a ball that's going forward to halfbacks, and you look at how Conor Murray struggled in the environment against Racing, because he was, for all the yardage and all the carries Munster were doing, he wasn't getting any go forward, and Ian Keatley wasn't getting any go forward. And look at the halfbacks for Leinster. So that would be my primary concern. It could work out that Joey Carbery could go up there and play lots of games, but actually come back a worse player. It is of crucial importance when you are in the Irish limelight that you're playing, your province you're playing with is actually functioning in the way that Leinster are. And I think they're the standard bearers of Europe, obviously, for many, many reasons. But that would be my concern. If I was Carbery and I was talking to Joe Smith, I'd be saying, hang on a second here, I'll go, but you got to make sure that I'm going to isn't a bunch of Keystone Cops.
Keystone Cops.
It's harsh, to be honest. I understand where he's coming from regarding results and stuff like that, but I don't think Joey Carbery, if he went there, would come back a worse player. Just because there's not a winning culture there now, and they're not challenging for European trophies and the Pro 14 currently, that doesn't mean you're going to come back a worse player. Okay, you want to play in a system where there's really good players. He's in one, he's not starting, but he needs to play matches. As 21, 22-year-old, to go through a year or two of a rebuilding process wouldn't be the worst thing in the world as regards his long-term development, because my fear for some of the Leinster guys now, and look, there's no reason to think that there'll be any downward spiral in recent years because of the evidence in Leinster at the moment, but sometimes you need to experience some losses, a bit of adversity to make you stronger and stuff like that. You don't have to experience it. You can win like James Ryan is all the time. But, I think the system and what's happening in Ulster, it's only going to get better. They have the resources, the finance. I think
it can't get any worse.
It can't get any worse at the moment.
It feels like
that's
it's
a team that's
a basket case.
They're going to finish maybe third, most likely fourth. They need results to go their way this weekend, and they'll miss out in the playoffs. But what's of the utmost importance is that they they win that playoff match that they're currently sitting in, and it'll probably be the Ospreys.
Yeah, we'll
to get into Europe.
We'll come back to that, the nuances a little bit later on. But the main thing is they've got no coach. If you're a player and you want to know what your future is, you can't sign for a province that has no coach. Because
if I was signing anywhere, Jared, the first thing I want to do is, who's the coach? What's he like? What's the reputation like? And then you want to start looking at the squad and the players and the people there, and say, well, how good is this team? Is there something good happening there?
Yeah. Can I just like, they're also very young. These aren't 25-year-olds. These aren't 26-year-olds. So you're taking them from an environment that they've been in for 4 years, and you're saying, okay, you're going to go up and live in Belfast, probably on your own in an apartment. And that's a lifestyle change, which, you know, maybe they're ready for, maybe they're not, who knows. But also, there's no guarantee that we're going to have a game plan, a style of play that suits your game, because the new coach might come in and say, well, actually, we need to be forwards oriented, and you're going to just kick the ball, and I've got one good back outside you at the minute who I can rely on. We're going to run some set moves off that to get Stockdale the ball as often as possible. Yeah. Or you could have somebody who's going to come in and play free-flowing rugby and decide that I'm going to build around this mercurial 10. It doesn't. Yeah,
there's a lot of risks there. There's no doubt about that.
And there's no guarantee that there's upside.
This story kind of came out last weekend, and it's up to the players themselves, really. They can't be forced there. It depends at the end of their contract, when their contract is up, whether they're getting offered another one by Leinster.
But should Munster be in the market for either of these two?
Of course they should, yeah, absolutely.
Are they an upgrade on Keighley?
And player movement around Ireland is something, I wrote about this a few weeks ago, that the other provinces are going to have to embrace more and just deal with, because of the numbers up here in Dublin. So it's up to the players themselves, and they've got to be happy. But I don't want to think a player's gone out for, even if it's only a year, you know, because Sexton's not going to go on forever, and you think Leo Cullen doesn't want to lose any his backup players at the moment, because they could be there for a very long time.
Yeah, and look, we'll talk about this as well. They obviously view Carberry as a 15, and so they see him as somebody who's the long-term replacement as well for Sexton. So they think they've got a 10 and a 15 coming through, two ball players, a completely different style of play from something that we've seen. And the next iteration of Irish rugby will actually be having somebody like Joey Carbery playing at 15. So we'll talk a bit about that a little bit later on. I want to bring you through the newspapers first.
OTB AM. In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
I should, of course, have said, if you want to give us any grief this morning, you can do it underneath our live streams. We're on youtube.com/offtheball. We're at OTB AM on Twitter. Sorry, at Off the Ball AM is the Twitter handle, and we're live streaming at Off the Ball on Periscope as well. So, as ever, if you want to get involved in the conversation, feel free to do so. Facebook.com/offtheball for a follow and like as well. So let's bring you through the first of the newspapers. I think I'm starting with the, as you can see, I'm very well prepared this morning with the Irish Independent. Neil Francis, reasons for Munster woe, more altitude than attitude. This is the sense that the trip to South Africa really damaged them. Armagh facing frosty reception to Portuguese warm weather training. John, so Armagh and the club month are actually apparently in Portugal, where I don't know if you can actually play any Armagh League games or Armagh Senior Championship games. Maybe they got special dispensation for that. Six-shooter Mullins in command of title race. An unbelievable day from Willie Mullins yesterday, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is out of the World Cup. Was it the trip to South Africa, which was supposed to be this amazing bonding experience, and it's all great, we've got everybody together and we're on tour, hey?
That's what we thought last week, and we spoke about it, you know, particularly after the Cheetahs win, 2 good wins, feel-good factor, a few beers, bonding. You know, the altitude does maybe had a factor, and they were out of the blocks really slowly. That there was a reason for that. What did they freeze a little bit? I'm sure they would have spoken about last year's semi-final against Saracens, imposing themselves early on. There was a lot of confidence in the group, but they looked a bit flat-footed, and there's a reason for that. Maybe it is that altitude thing. It's
a combination of a load of stuff, isn't it? They didn't get their game plan spot on. A bunch of players made mistakes. They were a little bit off. Racing were as good as they've been all season.
Racing's plan was to go out and blitz them in the first 20-30 minutes. They spoke about that after the game, their coaches, their players, because there was a fear maybe after 60-70 minutes. Because to be fair to Munster and on all the Irish provinces, they can play for 80. Yeah. They have an energy, a fitness level, a desire. And maybe that would have been something that the French were fearful if they get into that 60, 70, 80th minute, that they would get on top then and Racing would get tired. But so that was the plan, blow them away, look for some individual brilliance. Teddy Thomas, Vakatawa, you know, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah, the missed tackles weren't part of the plan either.
No, it wasn't, but that comes down to a little bit of fatigue, switching off. And one thing I said before the game to many people was if you concede a score in France, or even a second score, you must avoid panic then and have composure, and they didn't have that. Because
it actually looked at one point, the score was it 14-3, or even before the second try.
Yeah.
It's like, they're being hammered here, but they're still in it. And then once the third try went in, you're thinking, oh, it's just too big for them to be able to catch up.
And then you think before half-time, score there,
yeah,
game on, second half, 14 points down, you would have had that bit of energy going in, you know, and it just deserted them.
All right, on to the Racing Post, the continuing fallout from Paul Townend. So trainer Robbie McNamara has waded in, saying McNamara Irish racing dragged into gutter over Townend incident. Trainer hits out at regulator over long delay for official explanation. He does hit out at the regulator, but he also says Paul Townend or Willie Mullins probably should have said something themselves, but the Irish Horse Racing Regulatory Board should have come out and should definitely have said something. They waited 15 hours effectively to issue a statement, Townend effectively saying that he'd heard a shout to avoid the fence and had veered off to the right. But pretty interesting that obviously former champion jockey, now turned trainer Robbie McNamara says Twitter went mental and into complete rampage. It was horrific for Irish racing. So many people already think Irish racing is fixed. That view could not be further from the truth. But by saying nothing about what Paul had said to them, the stewards increased people's negative opinions about the sport in Ireland. And it's taken away from an amazing day for Paul Townend and for Willie Mullins.
Yeah, yesterday. But they should have come out and made some statement after the race.
PR 101.
But any sporting player, team, if something happens in the match, the event, the coach is asked afterwards, what about that incident?
Yeah.
Why that should have happened? We understand the reasons now, but that should have happened at the explanation, not 15 hours later, because that's when Robbie McNamara is talking about. That's where people have their opinions, right or wrongly.
Yeah.
Online, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I mean, this online presence of negativity, it should have happened just sooner, that statement.
Well, you get out ahead of the story. Like,
absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know Paul Townend's mental state in the immediate aftermath, but obviously yesterday he was fine because he went and performed brilliantly and exactly at the level you would hope that he would be able to do. So if he was suffering a bit of anguish after that, that's okay. Everybody actually...
Somebody else speak for him, Ger.
Or,
you know,
or
the
put
trainer,
him out. Put him out and let us see that,
look,
you know.
Something went wrong, I'm gutted.
Yeah.
I heard a shout.
It's a normal human reaction. People make mistakes.
Yeah.
Let him express that and let everybody go, Jesus, I feel sorry for him now. As opposed to, why the secrecy, lads? Why is it fake?
There was anger and kind of frustration, and then, you know, there's empathy then after the statement. Go, okay, why didn't you just say that a bit sooner?
Yeah. Not great when you have somebody like as high profile as Robbie McNamara coming out, and that's the lead in the Racing Post today. So that'll be the lead in all the English news agents this morning for racing fans as well. So on to the Examiner today. I have the Examiner right here. King of the Hill. Who's this? Well, it's Bells Hill strikes gold. A sensational six-timer lifts Mullins to summit. So an amazing day, as I said, for Willie Mullins. Jack Anderson asks, are we losing perspective of what sport is about? Always an interesting column from Jack. He's down in Melbourne, professor of law down there. But it's not that I wanted to draw your attention to this morning. It's this headline on a Larry Ryan piece. Punch-ups and unsavoury incidents marring underage matches in Cork. I'm like, underage matches, you know, maybe it's a minor game and the minor lads, there's a bit of... No, this is under 8 to under 11, and it's not the players, it's the mentors and the parents, and they're round with each other and they're attacking referees.
Well, it's this long-running debate about intervention from sidelines, parents coaching kids, shouting at kids, opposition parents shouting at each other, coaches shouting at each other, and it seems to be worse at that underage level, and it seems to escalate more because maybe we're, you know, I have a little boy, you've young kids, that you're maybe more protective of the kids if something happens to them, if somebody shouts something at them, and it's a serious issue, and we know the messages about kind of standing back, leaving them.
Yeah, but the Go games are supposed to be non-competitive. They're like, everybody gets to go. The clue is in the name. They're Go games. Everybody gets a chance to play. They go out, they practice their skills, they get a bit better. And yet there's obviously some parents so crazy that they're screaming. We've had a parent so enraged by a mentor's behaviour refereeing an under-8s game that he felt the need to confront the opposing mentor after the match. We had a punch-up on the sideline between parents and mentors. We've had a parent threatening a young referee. This is all reported in the Evening Echo. Colm Crowley is a games development administrator who runs Cork's Go Games, and he's like, I'm going to throw my hat at this. Like, why would I get involved in this unless it changes? Yeah, I can't understand it.
It's crazy stuff. It's just hard to police it as well, because how do you take that emotion? You keep these messages being sent out to people about that intervention as parents, as mentors, how you deal with particularly underage kids. It's a mess, really, and it's a hard one you just got to keep kind of hammering home that message that sometimes you just got to stand back, let your kids at it. If there's a bit of rough and tumble, you got to still stay back from it if the decision's by the referees, because it is very frustrating. I've been at those underage games where you're like, Jesus, the referee.
Are you one of those parents?
No, I'm not. I'm trying to. I've made a pact with myself to, after playing the sport and being involved in that heated stuff out in the field, to stand back. And sometimes my little fella is frustrated or angry with something, and he's maybe looking for me, and I've had to stand back.
Yeah.
But you know what? Any of these referees, the game wouldn't go ahead without them, and some of the decisions are wrong. Some of them are maybe frustrating, but you just gotta let.
I'd say the decisions at underage sport are no worse than the coaching at underage sport. Like, the coaching at underage sport is probably.
But some of the coaching intervention is a problem as well, Ger, where you have coaches from each side and they're halfway into the pitch and they're kind of dictating what should happen to the young referee or to their own players or to the opposition players. So there is a problem there with that coaching intervention as well. Yeah.
People say it's just vicariously parents trying to live through the kids, but it's not really. It's like it's something more sinister than that even.
There is, but you get entangled in that emotion as well when it's your child and something's going wrong. And look, none of us will allow, something that shouldn't be happening with your children. It'll frustrate you. But as regards the heat of the battle, the match, winning, the losing, there has to be a bit more silence on the sidelines for these games.
And they have to learn to lose. That's the whole point of this.
Absolutely. We hate losing though, don't we?
Yeah, but that's fine. It's like, it's okay.
I used to play five-a-side soccer with the boys in Limerick when we trained there with Munster, and Jesus, that was as bad as losing the match at the weekend. Because of the grigging coming off the pitch or off that indoor track that we played in UL, it was horrendous.
And what are the sidelines like in the matches that you're at?
By and large, good, but there is a lot of parent intervention and shouting and coaching from the sidelines up along. And I've tried to just kind of slip up to the corner when my little fella's playing and let the coach look after it.
Yeah.
Taking guys on, off, the disappointments of that, rotating players. It's easier said than done now, to be honest. But I find what frustrates me when I'm at some of these underage games is the coaching interventions. And
as in they're saying the wrong thing, or they're too aggressive,
they're kind of too, going at the referee themselves a little bit.
Rugby?
A little bit, yeah, and there's a lot of shouting going on. Look, in an ideal world, and it's very difficult to manage, we've got to try and stand back and separate that and just keep beating that drum and sending out that message, because it is causing, one little incident can escalate to someone. You said something to my Johnny and how dare you shout in something, and then there's a parent kind of moving over, and it's creating that angst,
Yeah, well, I mean...
And sometimes there's nothing at stake. These aren't cup finals.
Well, so the Go Games, there's
nothing at stake.
Everybody's supposed to be a winner at the end of it. That was kind of the point of that. It is a bit crazy, all right. Okay, so the Times Ireland, we only have the PDF of this one this morning. The horrific story of the Irishman who is in hospital fighting for his life at the moment, former chairman of the Dunboyne GAA club, and just take the headline back up for me there, sorry. So Rome to step up security after assaults, no alcohol around the stadium and extra searches. Obviously it's too little too late. The Roma fans have a history in European football of absolutely scumbag behaviour, stretching back 2 decades at this point. And yet, there was no sense that was imminent last night. There was no sense.
That's the craziness about this. Is UEFA have released a statement saying that they're going to investigate and they're going to take action. How long has this gone on now, Ger? How many matches? I saw from one of the journalists in the UK yesterday, soccer journalists, tweeting about the history and how many times this has happened, particularly to English teams. And in fairness, the English supporters, a lot of the time, they have a bad reputation and they get, they get involved and they're not squeaky clean either. But this has gone on so much with Roma fans, and some sort of serious intervention has to happen here.
Yeah, and the response from the Liverpool fans and from Liverpool to the situation Sean Cox finds himself in has been, it's awful. It's great to see that they've had that response, and hopefully he makes a recovery. So we send him our best wishes as well this morning.
For sure.
What have you got for us?
Okay, my papers are, I'm going to start with the Irish Times, and it's the match last night, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. Real Madrid winning 2-1 away from home. Clinical Madrid make most of Bayern's mistakes, and that was probably the story of the game. Mistakes from both sides. Looked very panicky, nervous, a lot of chances, but Madrid going for 3 in a row, and they looked clinical in the end. And
they look beatable as well, don't they?
They do look beatable. They look vulnerable.
Like a team who are about to win 3. So, like, in 50 years' time, kids will open whatever it is they're reading on at that point and look at the record book and go, wow, that Real Madrid team must have been absolutely amazing. But actually, they're just a really good cup team.
They've some brilliant players for sure, but they look vulnerable at the back, and Keylor Navas made a poor mistake for Kimmich's goal for Bayern Munich, and Bayern had a couple of great chances to stretch their lead, but Marcelo scored a great strike, and then they get the winner in the second half, and they just have that pedigree. It's kind of a mentality, isn't it, as well, with that quality. There's a really interesting one here, and it's hard to probably see it, and I want to get your opinion on this, Ger. Poor schools should have priority for sports grant, and that's a report that's been done. A review of the state sport capital grants programme has found that schools in disadvantaged areas should be given higher priority for funding in the funding rounds. Yeah, and this kind of follows the controversy probably of 150,000 to a private school, Wesley College, under the scheme that's happened in Dublin here. Yeah. So basically what we're saying is schools who need the money
will get the money.
Should get the money rather than maybe some of the private schools.
Yeah, 100%, right? This is exactly how this should be spent.
Yeah, and I was at an event the other night actually that was going through all the funding and the from the sports capital programme, and it's really interesting to see the stats, the numbers, and the sports that get more. And there's a massive interest in clubs, and maybe a lack of education about how they can apply for grants, how they can, how they should apply every year, and even if you fail, you should come back the next year about improving your facilities from the sporting club point of view. But here, from a school situation, it should be.
With all of these things, it's difficult. Obviously, you can't just hand money out willingly.
And there's a case,
taxpayers.
There's a good case everywhere for some sort of funding or sports facilities.
One of the things we had a basketball club from Cork, it was Neptune on, and they were talking about the roof of their stadium needs to be fixed, and they have a bunch of Desh schools in the area who use the basketball hall as a PE centre, and they didn't qualify because they weren't disadvantaged enough, even though there are a bunch of Desh schools right on their doorstep.
Their facility, yeah.
So basically the problem here is that the forums are so complicated that you need someone who knows how to fill out forms.
100%.
The top schools in Ireland have former pupils who are barristers and town planners and whatever it is, whatever consultants, whatever strata of society that they exist in, where filling in forms and getting money from various people is a relatively straightforward thing for them. They probably have somebody in their office who can do it for them.
And that's the key. We should try and download the information, pass it on to someone who's maybe in the habit of filling out forms for grants for.
It turns out your local TD, no doubt, will actually have somebody who can help you fill in these forms.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really think that's a good use of your local TD, but unfortunately, the corruption of the system in Ireland, the way we've set things up, where your local TD is the person who gets you shit. Like, unfortunately, we live in that country. If that's what sports clubs have to do to get 150 grand to allow kids to go out and play, then that's the system.
But you know, Ger, a really interesting point is there's so many clubs who apply and their applications are invalid. There's something like 28% of
which
applications.
They were saying that was a great figure because it used to be 50. It's like, she's only 28 now.
You know what the percentage should be for applications?
0.
They should be 0.
Yeah.
In other words, you should have your application, find the information. If you're unsure of stuff, go and get the relevant information and help to make sure that when you hand in your form, that look, it's 100%, there's no mistakes on it. You know this is what you're entitled to. Like there's a situation where for some capital grants for floodlights for a pitch that maybe you might have to have 10% of the funding yourself. So if it's 80,000, you have to have
go and fundraise. Yeah,
you know, you have to have 10,000 or whatever the number is first, and then you get the 70, and then you get the job done. So understanding and not making those kind of mistakes and knowing your percentages and all that kind of stuff. And what you're entitled to.
I do think preventing private schools from being able to access funding for capital sports grants for at least the foreseeable future is the way to go, so that we can have a proper sense of why are we doing this, what's the point of this. It's to try and make sports facilities available to those who need the most.
Need it.
Like if you've already got 14 hockey pitches, I'm sorry, we shouldn't be paying for another one.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, the next one is that's a good story, and we'll definitely come back to that one about the sports grants, and maybe if we get someone on to chat about it, it'd be brilliant, who've experienced maybe applying for a grant and, you know, had frustrations. This is the Herald. Salah battle, striker delays talks on contract. This one is making me nervous now.
Surely Liverpool have learned their lessons. You give him 250 grand a week right away and you say, whatever you want, just stay.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to do, but his initial contract is 75, 80 grand a week, which is terrible money, isn't it? But you imagine that.
So I don't think anybody knows how much he's getting. So we were sitting in the office today and Tommy was like, oh, 75 grand a week. And then he was like, oh, it's actually 120 according to this place. So there's a lot of
different misinformation. And his agent and himself have kind of said, let's forget it till the end of the season. I think it's the right thing to do, because he doesn't want this be embroiled in that's pressure that now at such a crucial stage and phase from, number one, make the Champions League for next year in the league proper. And, you know, they're in a great position to maybe win it.
I don't know why I think this, but you never felt like Luis Suarez was there for the rest of his life. And you never really felt, for a while you felt Fernando Torres might be, but ultimately there was always a sense that they were passing through. I don't have that sense with Salah.
Yeah, and I have this, maybe I'm being a bit naive, and maybe yourself, but I feel that Salah and Klopp have kind of
some kind of relationship.
Off. So it depends what happens. Look, there's been
Firmino, I'm not as sure about. Like I just because I don't know why. Like he's reaching a peak, and I don't know if it's just that Brazilians move all the time. It's kind of part of the football culture. It's like you move. You put your wheelbarrow out and you collect the cash as you go. Like, but because I think that it's a trio that they have, and they need to keep all of them. I think that Salah gets space and freedom because the other two are so dynamic and so brilliant. Yeah.
Well, they've been incredible, but I hope I'm right about the Salah thing. But I think, look, from where he's coming from Roma, and maybe not going that well for him at Chelsea before, and Liverpool thought they'd signed him that time. Hopefully he will stay, but what a season for him. This is a story from Conor McKeown just about the cooler quarter of 3 weeks to prepare for their hectic Leinster senior hurling campaign. And Sean Moran is talking about it there. I think there's 4 players: Sean Moran, David Tracy, Keane O'Callaghan and Jack Malone, who only 4 players from Coola are going to be in that hurling squad, but they're talking about the pressure, the 11-month season.
How tired they are.
Mentally.
It's a rollover from last year.
Maybe the expectation of these guys coming into the hurling panel now for Ger Gilroy, how does he manage that? Pat Gilroy, so your cousin. How does he manage that and get the best out of these players and have them fresh? And the other story here is Richie Hogan, war for Kilkenny. He's unlikely to be fit for Kilkenny for their championship, the first round anyway. He's been out since last year.
And maybe the whole Leinster championship. He's got a bad back. It's one of those injuries that seems to be...
It's unbelievably frustrating for him. But let's hope we get to see him back.
If you added Richie Hogan back into that Kilkenny team, and Paul Murphy and Colin Fennelly, that's a good team.
Yeah, serious team. And
maybe they just have to
they're on the way back as well. You know, Cody seems to be getting the best out of him. Salah the century. How Liverpool exploited Roma cash crisis to grab player of the year for just 38 million. At 38 million back then, maybe before
I wasn't sure
the Neymar deal.
Like, and was it always going to be a great signing if he had the same kind of career that he had
at Chelsea?
I mean, you're like, well, it's a bit of a risk. Now, obviously, it's one of the greatest deals that
it's one of the greatest deals ever, and
you could sell him for 250 million at this point.
It's just been incredible, but. That's the Roma chairman, director of football, was speaking about how they had to kind of adhere to UEFA, the fair play rules and financial pressures and stuff like that to balance the books to be in the Champions League. So he's come back to haunt him, really, hasn't he? Yeah. So far, anyway, in the first leg.
Roma are one of the few clubs in the world who seem to care about financial fair play. Everybody else manages to find a way around it.
Everybody else ignores it. And of course, that story, 9,802 to 1. Magical Mullins racks up an incredible 6-timer at Punchestown. Unbelievable, isn't it?
And around that, you'd be happy enough.
Yeah. We're going to get all the tips off John Duggan today. We could do with some winners, but it's incredible. And of course, this little caption here: gutted and devastated. End of the world for Oxlade-Chamberlain, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. He's going to miss that World Cup, which is, to be fair, he's had a, he's been
brilliant for Liverpool.
He's been brilliant for Liverpool, and you don't want to see anyone getting those injuries. We spoke about this. Paul Townend, from zero to hero after that story the day before, and he bounces back from opening day howler with a sensational treble. It's a big story, isn't it?
Yeah, and so he's obviously okay, and I'm glad that he's okay and that there isn't any lingering.
He's after recovering from that, and he looks like nice smiley face there, getting a couple of wins. You mentioned this one as well, Armagh's risky trip. Armagh Chiefs could be in pressure. They're going off to Villamora for a warm weather camp, and under GAA rules, of course, you're not supposed to do that 10 days before your championship opener. And will they be fined? Will there be home advantage taken off? And that's what invariably is going to happen. Now, these rules were breached a lot last year.
Yeah.
And they're gone off to Portugal for a week.
Yeah.
They could lose home advantage, and of course that would financially hit them
in the league game next year. Yeah.
Next year as well. So probably more on that. And the last one for me is the Sun. Another great story, farcical, and this is the story of Arsene Wenger's departure. Okay, we know he's gone, but it's the timing of it. Statements by the club. He's saying that the timing is bad. Then the club come out and say that he didn't mean to say that, and
they forced him to issue a statement.
They forced him to issue a statement. Of course, they say the story is he's getting an £11 million payoff to leave. He says he hasn't been sacked, but it's been by mutual consent. The club said on one of the websites it said that he was sacked. So it kind of rumbles on, that story, ahead of what you got to say is a vital game against Atletico Madrid tonight. Their only chance and salvation of obviously winning a trophy.
Well, if they
but
get through
also
that,
getting into Champions League as well. So
who knows? It could be an amazing effort because he's never won a European trophy.
Yeah.
Also, they could get spanked tonight. It could go one of several different ways.
What do you think of the timing of the announcement? Do you think it had to happen for Arsenal?
I think that
the fans, too much pressure.
I think that the atmosphere had become as toxic as it was going to get, and that so all of a sudden he's on a farewell tour, the ground will be full for all of these last few games. The team seemed a little bit listless, kind of like, well, I mean, what's the point of this? Whereas now, at least they all know, I need to play really well, either to get a move,
someone's watching,
or to impress the new manager. And also maybe somewhere in their souls they think, this guy was really good for the club, I can do my bit to help see him out,
Yeah.
You hope there's still enough humanity about them. Right, we'll move on to rugby. Yeah, so Liam Toland, as you've already seen, hopefully was on last night. We've talked a little bit about Joey Carbery. We'll come back to that in a couple of minutes' time. But we want to start by talking a bit about Munster. So here he is making the point that they need to strengthen their front five.
I think they have a problem in second row. If you contrast and compare the two games of the weekend, and you look at the platform that was given to the Leinster halfbacks, simply didn't exist. And what really struck me, statistics, if we get bogged down in statistics for a while, before the game, Racing had beaten 161 defenders in Europe, and Munster 94. Munster were the poorest of the four semi-finalists. But in the game, actually, Munster outbeat them 21-18. So they'd loads of possession. They'd loads of field position, and I felt that if Munster played the right game, that they would have ultimately tired Racing out and they would have beaten them. And I still hold that. I still think that Racing, I don't care what their scores are stats-wise, but they would have fatigued. The problem for me is that the Munster second rows and the Munster front five aren't giving them the platform. And you look at what Racing had in their second row and you think, wow, they've just done a Ryan, who's obviously a phenomenal player, and the freak that's beside him as well. Not only is a phenomenal player, but is a phenomenal offloading player. Yeah. The Munster haven't got that type of real big second rows who can add value to the ball as well. I think that's where they need to start with. If they get that front five, I think they can paper over a lot of the cracks that they have, and they are improving hugely. And I agree with what was said there about the midfield and the injuries and all that sort of stuff. For me, couple of big second rows who can play at semi-final level. I think that's of huge importance to them.
Is Ty Byrne one of those?
He's going to be a massive addition to him, yeah. I think he's even in the team, the Scarlets team the other day that were totally dominated by Leinster. He was good, yeah. He's abrasive, he's non-stop, he's involved in every kind of collision area. His reading of the game is really good. He's a brilliant footballer, Ger, and it's hard to coach that natural reading of the game and you know, watching him closely, he tracks the ball well, he knows when to have a go and have a pounce at it. Most turnovers in the Champions Cup by any player. I mean, it is a transformative piece to add to your armoury. Yeah, but what Liam is saying there, he's not that big, kind of strong, abrasive, really physical guy. He's very physical. He's a mixture of more athleticism and graft. That's why he can play in the back row as well. Klein offers that kind of physical presence, that brute force that you want in the second row. But I think they could do another second row, to be fair, and a tight head prop, maybe, you know, a front row option as well. They have a good few back rowers, plenty of options there, and a little bit more strength and depth and a bit more oomph, if you like. And it's not that you want to get rid of the players that are there, you want to actually build more depth, that when you have a European run and a Pro 14 run, that you can mix and match well. And
you're going to have 10 or 12 people injured at any one point, because that's what happens when you're playing.
Yeah, and it's difficult for Munster when you look, there's 6 guys that are potential starters last week, probably would have played a major role. Taute, Farrell, Clote, Tommy O'Donnell, Tyler Blandell. There's probably 1 or 2 more that I'm forgetting. But, you know, you're taking 5, 6 guys who are potential starters. Fortunately, there's a couple of 3 of them overseas players, but that's just the nature of what it is at the moment, and that's where they were stretched a little bit, and having those options to maybe bring that depth in and that quality, because when you go to European semi-finals, even from a home quarter-final situation where they rode their luck, you go, it's a step up, it's another notch, it's another kind of, the pressure is ramping up at that level, and as we spoke about the factors, the altitude, the travel, the 10 flights in 3 weeks. Before they went to South Africa, there was a couple of flights away from home as well. So it's a lot of travel. Yeah,
you know yourself, it takes a day or two to get it out of you, and you've got to get back on the plane to go. I mean, it's only a trip to France and they're used to it at this stage, but like, this is the first year of the Pro 14, so clubs have to get used to what that travel means and whether or not you just go out, and they couldn't sacrifice those games.
Yeah,
but maybe in retrospect,
look, they had to go, and I think it was a good idea to kind of bring as many as they could,
or do you bring your first 15 home the week early? Like, you know, is there a way around it somehow next time?
I think the altitude in the second game, and Neil Francis in the Indo actually makes a good point that Cardiff were in a similar situation. It's something like 55-hour travel out to South Africa, where planes
there was issues
delayed, and there was strikes in airports, and you know, they had a horrendous journey out there, but they played at altitude first, and then they played down in Port Elizabeth in the second game.
So there was a way at least to come back.
And maybe there was a kind of because there is a period of recovery after the altitude. That's scientifically proven that it can affect you in individuals in different ways. That they'd have looked a lot fresher in their game against Po at home, but obviously they have a home game.
Yeah.
If Munster were playing at Thomond Park, would they have got home to their own beds, a bit more rest?
Yeah.
So, you know, look, maybe it's only an excuse, but there has to be a reason sometimes, because I really thought, and their plan themselves would have been to start well. That it's always the plan in France, physically, maybe not in the scoreboard, but make an impact, be robust, be...
they were so static. Everything was like...
Yeah, it was just lacking that bit of energy, passive, wasn't it? And then you see their defence has been really good. They had conceded the least amount of tries in the Champions Cup before that.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're leaking 3 in the first half.
Yeah. A lot of focus, obviously, on the Zebo decision. I mean, I don't think it's just retrospective that people think it was a bad idea. I think pre-game people thought, okay, so he was obviously in good enough form to be picked for the quarter-final. He goes off injured because he gets done in the first minute. He has got some game time in the meantime to prove his fitness again. He's also your record try scorer, joint record try scorer in Europe, and this is a big game. And like, the opposition think he's so good they're signing him. So come on, stick him out there.
I thought it was a brave... I said that last week. It was a brave call. It was a big call. It was a call I wouldn't have made, even though, to be fair, the previous couple of weeks he was went off in a couple of games, made a few poor decisions, probably wasn't as sharp and bouncing around the place like he usually is. It was based on form, and Wootton, to be fair, is full of energy, training well, playing well. And look, Ger, to be honest, when you're 24-3 down and you're bringing players off the bench, the chances are it's not going to get any worse.
Yeah,
you're going to have that inevitable reaction.
Sure.
Maybe throw caution to the wind a little bit. But I would have started him. With that experience, with that quality, and you always try and start your best players, even if the form isn't the best going into it.
Racing start games well. That's their hallmark. They score most of their tries in the first 20 minutes in the top 14 and in Europe. So they knew there was going to be,
because the teams in France, they rely on outstanding individual talent. They don't have the same amount of structure. There's a lot of stop-start situations in French rugby in the top 14. And the plan was go out, blow Munster away in 20 minutes, and obviously not stop playing.
So start Simon Zebo for that, no?
That's I thought he should have started.
Just to make sure that
I thought he should have started. But look,
experience.
His plan was to try and have some impact and experience coming off the bench. So maybe Johan van Graan thought that maybe 40, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, bringing him off the bench, bringing Reece Marshall, who's a real impact player, Copeland. And I thought there was a bit of impact ready to come off that bench before the game, so there was some merit in it, but I still would have started Zebo, and I said it here last week.
Two things. What is the current situation in terms of the signings they need to make? So Tadhg is coming, but how many more players do they actually need before they're competitive? Should they have been in the market for somebody like, say, Jordy Murphy? If you want to be at that level, I think there's a player available.
Finances are an issue here as well, because it's just a reality, dealing with your budget and staying within the budget. How many internationals you have? How many of those, Stander, Murray, Earls, they're on national contracts, so they're kind of out of that pot that they have to play.
Murphy's not on a national contract.
I don't think Jordy Murphy's on a national contract, but he'd still be on a significant amount, probably that just a little bit below that.
And so you as the club have to pay that if he's not.
Yeah, you have to pay that. So it's a good kind of chunk of your budget. Whereas I'm not sure of the timing, but Chris Cloete maybe was coming in. It's probably not cost them as much. They can afford that maybe. So it's a kind of a catch-22 going back to this conversation that has been had before about outside investment and maybe a bit of support from maybe from the RFU. And I know they have tried to support Munster's books in the last kind of 2 years as well. But having the ability to go out and just give a guy $500,000 a year.
The way the story is always told is that the IRFU are bailing Munster out, but they're not. That's one of their properties, and so they're funding it as they should fund it, because without Munster they don't have players.
There was more support given around the finances in the academy and stuff like that, but I think when someone like Jordy Murphy would have been a brilliant fit for Munster.
Suddenly you have 6, 7, 8
international,
Ireland's internationals, and so Cloete has been a great signing for them.
But he's South African, and there's an Irish guy here that was up for grabs who
were Munster even some? Do you think?
I think they would have. Of course,
they were in the market for him, but they couldn't afford him.
Absolutely, yeah, and I don't think that budget situation would have affected them, and they've got to manage and balance the books. And in an ideal world, you want to go out and just spend money and sign players, and not too many. But
is there resentment in Munster at the fact that so many of the Leinster players are on central national contracts, which means that for all of the other advantages that Leinster have from the school system and being in Dublin and so much bigger population, that the IRFU also are picking up the tab for more Leinster players, thereby giving Munster or giving Leinster more money?
Most of them are on the Irish team, and if you're regulars on the Irish team, then you're in that position. So you've got Stander, Murray, Earls, O'Mahony, who else is there on the team, you know what I mean? And to get him into that Irish contract situation, to take him off your books, if you like. So it's difficult. And, that's kind of where they're at the moment. And the big one that kind of keeps cropping up is the Donegal one. We're talking about Mo Salah going back to haunt Roma. Donegal Ryan came back to haunt Munster at the weekend, because I know from playing with him, he's so good at and he's learned so much from O'Connell. I'd like to say he's learned a bit from me and around the line out as well. But, you know, he's really intelligent and he puts a huge amount of work in front of the laptop, analysing.
He was in here just after Christmas talking about in France, basically, he's watching every Pro 14 game because, you know, it's like he's just there and he loves watching rugby and he loves seeing what they're doing. Like, and obviously has his giant rugby brain looking at everything going, ooh, that's interesting what they're doing. Might have a little bit of that.
Yeah, and that's...
Him and Ty Byrne would be a good second row.
He would have been integral part of that win for Racing the other day. So the frustrations of maybe him going in that central contract, but, you know, I believe he was offered a good contract anyway, and maybe that Donncha wanted to leave, so that's kind of been mirrored over a bit. But, you know, that's just the reality of the market forces at the moment. Gone are the days, unless you get you can maybe get one or two marquee guys, but having 4 or 5 marquee over signings is very, very difficult, and you have to balance the books more.
Yeah. Okay, just want to show you this. This is a graphic from Roy O'Connor in the Irish Independent today. It's the interprovincial table over the last 5 seasons, and this is where the so there's a points there. Yeah, so Munster won in 16-17, Ulster won in 15-16, Munster won in 14-15. This year, though, it's not even close. Leinster have won all 5 of their interprovincial games. Connacht are second, Munster third, and Ulster actually joint on 8 points there, but with a pretty horrific points difference. I mean, Leinster obviously had an amazing season, but
it just reinforces that point that, you know, the A-B team with Leinster is there's so much strength and depth there, and they, you know, a lot of the players in the so-called second team have played in these inter-pro games, and they're the ones who've got the results from. So it's particularly, you think of that one down at Christmas in St. Stephen's Day down in Limerick. There was a lot of, you know, guys who probably don't start in the Champions Cup playing that day, and they've. Is there an A and B team now in Leinster? No.
It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
really
they've a lot of depth there, and that's the key to having a good season, is having depth and having that ability to have a real competitive edge in training as well as the quality.
Let's talk about this weekend's games then. Is there Connacht are talking up the possibility of having for the first time 3 wins in one season against their interprovincial rivals. It's John Muldoon's farewell to the sports ground. There's a lot of emotion around that. Leinster are coming down off a massive emotional high. Probably the best time you could get them. Leinster are already qualified, and yet there's a bunch of Leinster players who are like, I'm going to stick my hand up here now, because if I play a good game here and get potentially picked for the Champions Cup final, I could have 2 medals in 3 weeks.
And that's what Leo Cullen will try. You want to try and compete. The challenge for him is creating that competitive environment, having everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, kind of contributing and pushing hard. So he'll challenge them to go and play Connacht this weekend and get a result and go to the sports ground and spoil the farewell for John Muldoon, who's been incredible. It's phenomenal to think that a guy has stayed there so long, been so loyal.
Over 300 games.
Yeah, and 327 games for Connacht. It's phenomenal.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And to stay that loyal and to probably deal with a lot of kind of disappointment over the years, particularly in the earlier years where you're not getting results, you're fighting at the foot of the table, to winning it in 2016, to being the one that lifted that trophy. I think it was just a brilliant story for him.
Yeah.
That emotional Saturday will be brilliant, and people want to give him a send-off. But it's been a disappointing season for Connacht. You make no bones about that. They're going to finish 6th in Conference A, not challenging for playoffs, not going to be Europe as well. So it's been disappointing under Kieran Keane, and they've lost a lot of games, been very, very inconsistent. You know, they've won 6, lost 14. It's
not great.
It's not a good return.
No.
So
a lot of them are one-score games. Like there has been a proper transitional period, and I think it's inevitable after somebody who had such cult-like success as Pat Lam had, that there's going to be
absolutely.
a natural drop.
It's been difficult for Kieran Keane to adapt himself, probably from, you know, with respect, working with maybe 10, 12, 15 All Blacks in a squad and the Chiefs squad that he's come from, to kind of taking that transition from Pat Lam. There's a number of changes, there's a number of players have been released. You know, you're losing your captain, you're losing the fabric of your kind of group. And he's going to have to, so maybe there's to be a bit of pain before there's a bit of gain for Kieran Keane and Connacht again. And there's massive ambition there. They spoke about that ambition, but they've got to kind of bounce back now and make sure that they get their squad right for next year. And no better way than to finish the season on a high and give John Muldoon a good send-off and beat Leinster on Saturday, dust themselves down for next season, get a good pre-season and come back stronger, because they need to be better next year. Yeah, totally. And no less than the support that both Ulster and Munster need. Connacht needs to see proper support from the IRF. Yeah, and it's a brilliant place. Honestly, it's unbelievable. And I think, as I said, what happened in 2016, everybody loved that. You know, even Leinster supporters who lost and had that disappointment of losing, they loved the story and they were happy that, you know, it was a good story. It was a great story for Irish sport. A lot of people are getting in touch by tweets, in particular, in relation to any abuse, no? Yeah, plenty of it. I'm going to get some of it here. Most of it is to do with Toland's comments last night. There's nothing wrong at all in Ulster Rugby, nothing at all with the executive level, with the players, nothing. So there's a debate happening between the Ulster fans and everybody else. Ruan Pienaar's got dragged into it and how he was allowed to go and how that was a bad move by Ulster. Ultimately, John Quinny has come in there. He's been fantastic. So I think the Ruan Pienaar one was obviously hurtful at the time for them. You're losing one of your talismanic figures, a real leader in the group. And then Cooney comes in and he does really well, and it creates another opportunity for an Irish scrum half. So I don't think that one, but I don't agree with the texter, whoever it is, that there's nothing wrong. I think they've made a lot of mistakes and they need to fix them now, particularly around their coaching and their recruitment. One last point on Joey Carbery, because we talked about it a little bit earlier on. If you missed that, you can scroll back and see it when the show is over. Leinster have been on the record as saying that they view Carbery as somebody who will get game time at 15 as much as game time at 10. He's been injured for most of this year, so saying, he got hardly any game time this year is just a complete red herring, I would argue, in the whole order of things. Sexton won't play every game, barely plays for Leinster really over the course of the season. So you've got two players in Byrne and Carberry who can play 10, and you have two players who can play 15 in Rob Kearney and Joey Carbery. Kearney also is somebody who's had an injury profile up to this year, which would suggest that he'll miss time over the course of the season. So and both Sexton and Kearney are on the other side of 30, so how long more are they going to be around? But you think from Leinster's point of view, Carberry and Sexton are going to be gone a lot over the next kind of 18 months. And what do you want Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster to do? So let Ross Byrne go and have nothing, or like Harry Byrne, his brother is coming through, and apparently he's sensational as well. Yeah, but so he needs time to blood and to understand exactly what it's like. And play at that level and mature and grow. So they're in a bit of a situation where they should be digging their heels in. From the practical point of view, you want these guys all kind of playing matches and playing regular games and really developing, because that is the fear that if Sexton was out for a period of time and Joe Schmidt is to go forward with him, or even Leinster's to go forward at that top end, you know, getting to some of that exposure and that regular game time. But look, they're incredible talents. I think Ross Byrne has just improved so much as well. So calm and composed. He's a brilliant player. Yeah. And I think any of the provinces, not just the provinces, would love to have either a Carberry or a Byrne. Yeah. No, for sure. All right, well, that one is going to continue to run until it gets killed stone dead. But certainly the timing of the whole conversation in the midst of the season hasn't been, it's just been a bit weird by the IRFU to, in the middle of Leinster's busiest period, just before two big Champions Cup games, for this to be a story that they're talking about in every press conference. Somebody in there is not handling their PR very well. Right, let's move on, because Andy Lee was on the show. We're going to talk racing with John Duggan in a moment, but I just want to play you this. It's Andy Lee talking about the unbelievable performance from Carframpton, which has just cemented his place in the Hall of Fame, really, at the weekend.
All gone. The one people, I think he would most likely like the Santa Cruz fight, but as you said, Leo Santa Cruz fighting Abner Mares again, I think. That's what it looks like. Yeah. So that would be pushed back maybe to 2019. I think the one that would be easiest to make would be, even though he's mandatory to Oscar Valdez, I think going with the Lee Selby fight, if Selby beats Warrington, I would favour Selby to beat him, but there could always be an upset there. You know, Warrington's a good fighter. And if Warrington somehow snuck a win against Selby, would you fight? Would Warrington and Windsor Park be the natural fight? Yeah, I think so. Okay. And so I think the winner of that fight, because they're both on the same promotion with Frank Warren, it's a natural fight to make, and it's still in the domestic scene, so it would be a big big local rivalry.
Yeah,
so
Windsor
to
Park,
speak.
he'll be huge.
Whereas not
yeah.
many people would be aware of Oscar Valdez. Fighting mainly in California, although he's a bigger name in world boxing. I think Frampton Selby is a huge fight.
Yeah.
And a really, really good fight. Yeah.
After a win, they're on.
You're just giving us that there. We're back.
Sorry, we're back.
John, how are you?
Good morning, Jaron. Quinny, how we doing?
John, how are you?
Are you
we want
gambling?
winners, John.
Are you a horsey man, Quinny?
A little bit. If somebody tells me, look back this horse and there's a few bob in it for you, it's a great chance.
What if they lose? What if they
They're
lose?
big trouble. So John, don't give us any losers.
You're from
no.
horse country, Quinny. You're from
I
Tip.
am, yeah. Well, it's massive all around me, yeah.
Ballydoyle and
Loads of
Feathered
people love it, yeah.
Mouse Morris,
I
Edward
love it.
O'Grady, Aidan O'Brien.
I play golf with Mouse
Yeah.
fairly regularly, yeah.
All right. So
I just ask him, I said, Mouse, give us a winner, and he just gives a grunt at him, and the other great one, Charlie Swan, I'm name dropping here, you can pick up all the names. I used to say to Charlie, such and such a horse, is she going to win? And he'd just say, she's in good old form. That's all. And I'd be like,
What
you're
does that
telling me
mean?
nothing, she's in good old form. One of those racing, a bit of terminology, but I would have an odd bet, John, I would, to be fair.
On the handicaps in rugby, probably, Quinny, yeah.
Occasionally as well, but very occasionally. But if somebody, I love the fact that, and I'm going to Cousins Pub in Tipperary and the racing is on, and I see all, the boys are keen, and I think it's unbelievable what they do.
Yeah, it's great, and like we've seen, I think there's been €10 million earned by Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott over the whole season, and it's down to 48 grand.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Phenomenal, isn't it?
So it's like Bush versus Gore. It's every race is a rolling update from horse racing Ireland, and it just shows the quality of the race and how great a season it's been. And 3 days to go.
Yeah. So how was your day yesterday?
Well, I was busy doing work, so. Don't gamble, folks, if you're working or if you're busy. Also, never mix alcohol and gambling. So they're the kind of disclaimers that we're getting out of the way. But, it's very difficult to do 5 or 6 hours of form study and if you've got other things going on. And that's not an excuse. It's just reality. And it's if you get involved in that situation, then sometimes it can go wrong.
Yeah.
So Felix de G flopped.
Well, we were, yeah. No, Felix de G, we had a shout for Felix de G as well. And
no, it just wasn't his day. And
not
that's
a great
the way it
day.
goes.
Yeah.
Just as much as Paul Townend had a mare on Tuesday and he had a brilliant day yesterday, 3 winners.
That might have been the only predictable thing. It was like, what's going to happen, Paul Townend?
Yeah.
He's probably going to bounce back.
He didn't he? Prava Laguna, next destination, was a very good winner of the 3-mile hurdle, and then he Patrick's Park and a handicap chase. And 6 out of 7 for Willie Mullins. That's pretty special. And I think the reason why he's leading the trainers' race now is because if Gordon Elliott had trained 6 winners yesterday, would they have all been from different owners and different connections? Possibly not. Possibly maybe 3 or 4 of them might have been Michael O'Leary's Jigginstown House stud. And I think that might be the reason if Willie gets over the line by Saturday.
He's got more...
Yeah, he's just got more variety and depth in terms of his owners, especially in handicap races. And if you're looking at today, you're looking at the 2 Grade 1 races. Willie Mullins has Footpad, who's absolutely bomb-proof. I can't see him being beaten in that Ryanair Novice Chase. He's odds on. And in the Stairs Hurdle, the half 5, he's got the first 2 in the betting. Penn Hill, who won the Stairs Hurdle at Cheltenham, and Bacardi's, who won a Grade 1 at the track last year. So it's very much going to be a situation that Gordon will have to run Sam Crow, I think, in this champion hurdle tomorrow, and you have to hope that Fairclass wins that juvenile hurdle. You look like you've taken that Sam Crow money, Jared.
I hope everybody took the 7-4 that I was telling you about yesterday. Yeah. Odds on now.
All that True Self money's gone into Sam Crow. It's waiting there. It's gathering interest per hour.
Well, or else it's like pissing it away. Who can tell? So you said the Ryanair Chase is the first of these 2 races that we're talking about, is it?
It's the second one, but it's the one that Willie Mullins has a pretty much a bomb-proof chance in. A 60,000.
What time is that going to post?
6:40 is the time of the race. 67,850 for the winner. Footpad has been great. Of course, Ruby Walsh isn't riding him because he's injured. Daryl Jacob, who rides so well for those owners, Simon Munir and Isaac Swade. He had, I think, 3 winners at Aintree for them. Daryl Jacob and Footpad has, done nothing wrong all season. Patima Schwar kind of was too exuberant at Aintree for me, and I can't really see Footpad being beaten in that one. So that's quite a straightforward. Of all the races today, there's 3 races with 25 runners. So of all the races, that's the most straightforward, but you're not going to make money out of it.
Footpad's 9-4 on.
It's maybe one for the multiples.
Yeah,
get if you're doing like a lucky 15 or one of these multiple bets.
What's so good about Footpad? Why are you so confident?
He's just a natural over fences, and I think that at 2 miles you need to jump with speed over that distance. 3 miler maybe can get away with the odd mistake. At 2 miles, there's no breaking the gallop. It's relentless. So horses that run well over hurdlers, often you find with the best novice chasers, they were good hurdlers. Some of them might have run the champion hurdle. Footpad did. Last year, I think he was 4th. Petit Mouchoir and him were very, very similarly matched. But Footpad is one of the best jumpers you would see. And what happens in the 2 mile race is at speed, you gain lengths at your fences. You gain 2 to 3 lengths because Paul Townend knows Footpad is not going to make mistakes in the race. And if he just puts him right at the fences, then he can dictate the pace of the race. Whereas another horse that might make a mistake over that distance, you lose 2 or 3 lengths. That can be the difference in the race. They lose a bit of ground. And whereas in a Gold Cup or a Grand National, you can maybe afford to make a mistake and then take your time to get back into the race. They don't have time over 2 miles, especially on drying ground, which we have this week.
So you're saying stay away from that really, unless you want to.
Yeah, unless you put it in multiples. Yeah, really, that'd be my advice there.
Okay, so the Ladbrokes Champion Stairs Hurdle is the other one we're talking about.
Yeah, the only bet. I mean, I'm only going to do one bet again today. Bacardi's. I followed this horse for probably about 2 years now.
Yeah.
I think you have as well.
Cheltenham last year.
And this year. This year, he came to the last, probably going to finish in the places and tipped up. He fell at the last.
I think I probably had him this year as well.
Under Patrick Mullins, who rides him again today. I spoke to Patrick Mullins in October. And I asked him, give me a horse to follow for the year. And he said Bacardi's. Bacardi's has won a 2.5 mile grade 1 around the track last year, beating Finian's Oscar, who has been running well. Won at Aintree. Finian's Oscar over fences was running very well and has been carried out on Tuesday. I think 3 miles will suit Bacardi's. He was running over fences this year. Fences did not suit him. We're talking about jumping there.
Right.
Now he's gone back over the smaller obstacles, and I think with a stronger pace today, over 3 miles, I think at 7 to 2, I think Bacardi's is the one I'm going for today. Penn Hill is the favourite.
Okay, so that's the difference for anybody wondering. This is over hurdles.
Yes.
So they're the smaller fences, and it's a slightly faster race.
Yeah, hurdles are the smaller obstacles. They're easier to jump. But once again, say over 2 miles, you need to jump hurdle as well.
Yeah.
But fences are much bigger obstacles, and then the Grand National fences you see at Aintree are even bigger at times, and they got the big spruce in them. But yeah, so the bigger obstacles are the fences, and there's races over 2 and 3 miles in both codes, hurdles and fences. So Bacardi's wasn't good enough to jump fences. So they're reverting back to the smaller obstacles because they think he's got the engine, he's got the pace,
power.
you know, to be and the power to not only be a good over 2 miles, but also have the stamina to win over 3 miles. And that's why I think Bacardi's will be thereabouts today. Penn Hill is the one to beat. Won the Stairs Hurdle at Cheltenham, hadn't been seen since last year at this meeting. But after winning at Cheltenham last year, he disappointed at this meeting. So that would be the only thing at 2 to 1 that would
I'm always intrigued, John, when Willie Mullins or a trainer has 3 or 4 horses in a race. What kind of instructions does he give to them all? Who does he want to win?
He wants any of them to win, and because of his trainer's title. And I think that's generally Willie's,
for the different connections.
Yeah,
and stuff
for the different connections. Everybody, you know, there's a lot of owners that are putting a lot of money, a lot of training fees. I think it could be about €1,600 a day to train a horse, or €1,600 a week. Sorry, a day would be a bit excessive. €1,600. No, it's a month, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's probably around a monthly fee. $1,500 to $2,000 a month is kind of.
I'm thinking in lira. €1,600 a month. That's a lot of money. Like, so obviously in the summer they
having
put out
already
the grass.
bought the horse.
Yeah, you know, the horse would cost 50, 100 grand. So like people like Graham Wiley's put a huge amount into Willie's yard, and he rewarded yesterday with Bells Hill won the Gold Cup. But we saw yesterday Tornado Flyer won the bumper. Willie was I think the 3rd fancied horse out of the yard. Yeah. On the first day Draconian won a novice hurdle at 25 to 1. So I wouldn't put anybody off backing Faheen, for example. If you think Faheen will bounce back and win over a longer distance than he has been running over. This is 3 miles opposed to what Faheen was winning champion hurdles over 2 miles. York Hill has gone at the game, so you could forget about him. Shane's Hill gone at the game. But yeah, I wouldn't put anybody off backing one of Willie's outsiders.
A lot of very familiar names here as well. You got Jeske in the middle of this.
Jeske, yeah, former champion hurdle winner and former winner of this race.
Just too old.
10 years of age. Yeah, it's lost its zip.
10's young enough, but not for a hurdler, is it?
Not for a race of. I think that he's not that he's too old. Is that the younger horses are now faster than him. Whereas I think that if you had, this is a grade 1 race, they're all off level weights, whereas you're talking about a Grand National of a handicap, and Jeske was carrying 2 stone less over 4 miles.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
his age might actually be a benefit to him.
Okay, so you're saying a small enough?
We're sticking on the
Bacardi's?
rum, Ger. We're continue on this rum drinking expedition with Bacardi's, and that's really my only bet of the day, because I find it, I find Punchestown has generally delivered strange results over the years, and I think that's my excuse really for the first 2 days.
Yeah, I do.
Like the handicap hurdle, the first race has got 25 runners. Watch what's being backed. This is where the market actually comes into play. So what's been backed in the first race? A Gordon Elliott horse, could you believe? Jack Kennedy on board. Park Paddocks, there's money for that into 7-1. That is noticeable. He's only a 4-year-old. He won well the last time, and he could definitely improve. Park Paddocks, so the money has come for him. Bon Papa is the favourite for the second race. That's a handicap chase over 2 miles. But once again, 24 runners. I'm not going near it.
When you say, does that mean there's potentially surprises at a race meeting like Punchestown? I don't know enough about it, John. A friend of mine goes racing a lot, and I said, do you listen to the pundits talking about it? And he says, I follow the horses myself. I follow their form. I love to go to the parade ring to watch the body language of the jockey, the trainer, the horses, a bit of whispering going on. And he's a really good return. Now, he's not a big gambler, but he loves his racing. And it's amazing, like, sometimes he'd tell me that horses that are not fancied, they're going well, and someone has missed a trick. And that's probably the intrigue, isn't it? To be able to follow a horse and understand the story behind what the last few months or year has been for him.
What I love about racing is, and golf to a degree as well, when I'm having a everybody loves to play God, and to be able to say, okay, there's a 25 runner race, like you did the other day with that True Self, and go, I'm going to pick that horse, and then actually see it.
I know, I got a bit of information, that's all I got.
Jerry, you shouldn't have admitted that. And then it materialises in front of, it materialises, and it's like, wow, like I worked this out, I worked out this puzzle, and then this puzzle is materialised for me. Yeah. And it's just, it's a beautiful feeling, and that's, now it's a feeling that you need to be careful of, but you can get carried away.
And favourites win a lot in racing, don't they?
I think a third of the time they win, but your friend is right, because the best judge, if you know your stuff, like you know your rugby. I don't really know my rugby that well. It's not one of my best sports, but you will see during the year, and you will, Ger, in other sports like American football or whatever, that you will see something that, what are odds? Odds are only a bookmaker's opinion that is generally meshed into a general mean of all bookmakers. But as odds compiling, as you've got experts in soccer, in golf, in horse racing, that will compile odds, and then the market moves obviously odds, especially in horse racing, based on stable confidence or owner confidence. But that's all it is an opinion, and the more you know about something, you're going to have occasions during the year when your opinion actually, that price is wrong, and that's when you get involved. So your friend is right in that the best judge you can be is your own judge. And that's why today, when I'm looking at 25 runner races at Punchestown, after Cheltenham has been run, which is, to me, is all about peaking for Cheltenham, that is really the pinnacle of the year, because the horses have been tuned for that to perfection.
That's why Penhill might be overturned today, because they peak for Cheltenham, and we'll see next year Penhill will come back and it'll be all systems go for Cheltenham again.
Get a Bird the other day. Now, he's had enough runs and he was nowhere. Paloma Blue, nowhere. So that makes me a little bit more wary and circumspect of backing a Punchestown, because you've had Cheltenham, you've had Aintree, you've had Ferryhouse. And this is the long season. Also races at Leopardstown over the Christmas. So you're looking for fresh horses. And that's with 3 25 runner races. I find it difficult to go with confidence. Footpad, you can say with confidence, could win, but the value isn't there. That's why today it's probably best to have a couple of euro each way on an outsider. For example, in the 605, Art of Security, no meets horses are running well. Joey Sassa was second the other day, so Art of Security at 20-1 was something I just spotted. Will I back him maybe a euro each way? Probably not, but Bacardi's is the only one I really fancy. But that's what I'm talking about, that you might have horses coming back. That horse 3 Stars that you backed at Cheltenham, Ger, is running there, and there's another horse in the same ownership, Tis a Mystery from Henry de Bromhead, same trainer, a 20-1 shot. Tis a Mystery was another one I spotted.
Oh yeah, 3 Stars. When 3 Stars running?
In the 4:15. That's a 2 mile handicap chase, a 24 runner race. So you spot one here and there, but you can't with confidence say that, you know what, I'm going to have 20 quid each way in this, because it's probably too much to be
3 Stars, the horse we backed in the last race at Cheltenham, finished 6th, and we didn't finish 5th, and we didn't get paid out on. That was that one.
That's the one, yeah.
I had it as part of like a giant.
Yeah. It might pay you back today.
It could pay you back today.
It's a double with far class on the last day, and.
So in terms of what's been backed, there's money for Cantlow in the 450. That's the Latouche Cup, the cross country race over the banks. That's for Mark Walsh and De Bulger. There's a favourite. Willie Mullins has Glenn's Harmony. That's in the 7:15. There's 8 races today. It's pretty much a marathon today. Glenn's Harmony, David Mullins, Willie Mullins. That's one I'll be definitely on the right side of in a Mares Novice hurdle. So Glenn's Harmony I'll be on the right side of. I think Footpad will win. I think I'll be on the right side of the fact that this horse has been backed in the first Gordon Elliott Park paddocks. But Bacardi's is the one I'm going for tentatively today. And hopefully I'll be able to do 6 hours of research later on today, and we'll have a better sense tomorrow.
John, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us.
Great stuff, John.
Come on, Quinny, back those horses.
I have a couple picked here now. Very small bets, though. Very small, John.
Here's Kenny Cunningham on last night's OTB talking about Arsene Wenger's legacy.
Specifically, if you look at the kind of last half a dozen years of his Arsenal career, I don't think it's been good enough. I think player recruitment has been poor. I think he's been found out a little bit in terms of tactically, in terms of the approach of his team, how well they're prepared, how well they're drilled. We've spoken about that earlier. I think he's been overtaken. A lot of top managers now, they just don't accept it. You know, they prepare their teams. Everybody understands their role. They have a clear vision in terms of what they're going to do on the pitch and now possession of the football. We know that's the way with Klopp, Conte, Guardiola is a manic obsessive when it comes to these things, and you see the benefit. It's no surprise that these are the teams that have been contesting the Premiership over the past couple of years. So that's what they need in a new manager who comes in, who can get the work done on the training pitch, and who can get the player recruitment, which is now going to pass into the hands of other people at the football club.
I would argue it has damaged his legacy. I think we'll never in our minds be able to fully separate the last decade of Arsene Wenger's career from his overall achievements. I think Kenny used the phrase found out there. I think you will look at Wenger and you'll think, well, look, he was ahead of the curve for a little while in diet, nutrition, but as soon as everybody caught up and as soon as that golden era of French players he knew so well had gone from a recruitment point of view, he wasn't able to set up the team properly.
Maybe that's what the legacy is. What happens, it seems to me, is that rose-tinted glasses kick in very quickly and everybody will go, Arsene Wenger, what a legend, and that will be pretty much the end of it. In 10 years' time, they'll go, yeah, he was a legend. He turned Arsenal into an absolute force, and part of it then is the success of the next manager who comes and builds on it. And if somebody comes and builds on it, it's like Wenger is the architect of modern Arsenal. Made them the stadium, kept them profitable, made it a brilliant job for whoever comes next.
I felt sorry for him now, and I have felt sorry for him for a while, because I think that great stability, winning the trophies, winning a lot of stuff with Arsenal, making them so, having that stability there for so long, and you just hear the chants and the things that have been said and ex-players speaking about him, and maybe he stayed too long. I think he has stayed too long, and it's just kind of unravel for him.
Does he? So like,
it's a pity. There's no kind of.
What's the legacy though? Does it damage the legacy in 5 years' time? Will everybody remember?
Slightly, but I think, as you said when we were chatting earlier, because it's announced now, it gives him a chance for the genuine supporters to come out and say, thanks for the memories and well done for what you've done for the club, rather than that negativity to overtake and continue. A couple of bad results, backed up with more bad results, have created this. I've watched games at the Emirates this year, and you've seen them as well. Half empty stadium. Yeah. It's a problem, and that causes panic, and that's the biggest panic that's caused.
Yeah.
Sponsors and bums on seats, and that's money, and
money talks,
and particularly in that game.
We've got John Hartson on the line. John, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, very well, thank you.
So we're talking a bit about the legacy of Arsene Wenger ahead of this game against Atletico Madrid tonight. Do you think it's been significantly damaged by the last 5-6 years, or ultimately will his legacy always be the fact that he built the team twice that won the league?
Well, I think he will go down as Arsenal's most successful manager. Greatest, you could argue George Graham did very well there, won the double. But I think it's a case of his first 10 years was extraordinary, wasn't it? I think 3 league titles, the Invincibles, a Champions League final, I believe, and in the previous 10 years, other than 3 FA Cups, I don't think they've really looked like they were challenging for the Premier League title. A couple of really, really heavy defeats. I think to Chelsea 5, 3 or 4 times. I think to Manchester United was 8-2. Bayern Munich 12-1 over 2 legs in the Champions League. I think when you get heavy drubbings like he's had, that obviously causes a little bit of unrest amongst the Arsenal faithful and the fans. So for me, I played under him. He's an absolute gentleman, a wonderful man. Initially, in his first 10 years, brilliant. In the previous 10 or 12 years, not so good. But he's held on to his job. I think a lot of Arsenal fans wanted him out a long time ago, 5-6 years. I think it's been long overdue, if you like, in terms of him leaving the club. I think he'd lost the majority of the fans probably several years ago now. So his time has come. He's leaving. I think we just draw a line under it now. He's leaving Arsenal in search for a new manager. The crowd hopefully will get behind the team this evening, and hopefully they will give Arsenal the swan song, the farewell that he thoroughly deserves, because he has been a very, very good manager. But in recent years, it doesn't take a blind man to realise that he never achieved what they achieved in this first period, in that first 10 years.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really straightforward legacy. Brilliant at the start, not so good at the end.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
But I also think that what happens next is very important in terms of his legacy. If a new manager comes in and does really well, the fact that he built the stadium, the fact that the club is really healthy financially, the fact that it is a very, very attractive job for some of the best managers in world football, that will stand him in good stead as well. That he took the club through a very difficult period when a lot of other clubs got into debt, and he didn't. That didn't happen. He refused to allow that to happen. At some point, that will actually become a positive for him in a way that it was very much a negative for the Arsenal fans over the last 5 or 6, 7 years.
Yes, I think you're right. I think, sometimes I don't think the fans really appreciated when, he didn't have a lot of funds to spend. He wasn't giving them funds because a lot of them funds that were available were going in to build this amazing Emirates 60,000 all-seater stadium, which a lot of people think is better than Wembley, by the way, in terms of a stadium. It's absolutely magnificent, the infrastructure there, the training ground, and that probably held him back in terms of going out there and spending the fortunes on players. I think everybody understands that. And it's a great club. I played at Arsenal for over 2 years. It is a wonderful club. It's the biggest club in London, fan base. Might not be the richest, I think, with Abramovich's money. And, but for me, it's the biggest fan base around the world in terms of Arsenal, the following they get. But yeah, I think he walks away with a lot of credit, in terms of what he's done. His first 10 years as manager, the second period, people have to appreciate that he was held back slightly with the funds. He's put in a fantastic stadium. I think the team needs a little bit of help in terms of the new manager will come in. He want to bring in his own players. He want to spend some money. He will get rid of several players that are there now, who we probably feel are not quite good enough at this level, and they've shown that, over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So yeah, he leaves a fantastic job for somebody. It's just a case now of where Arsenal go, and in terms of what sort of manager that they actually go for.
It really feels they should try and break the bank to get Diego Simeone. He hasn't even been mentioned as a potential, and yet here he is coming to town tonight. Oh look, this team, they play the type of football that meshes what George Graham did with what Arsene Wenger does, and he's a young firebrand. He'd get everybody going. He'd have the world's football media attention. He's the perfect solution.
Well, you make a good point, but there's other managers as well that will come in to the fray. There's Allegri at Juventus, who's done a fantastic job there. Luis Enrique did well at Barcelona, although he's quite young. Not been in management for awful long. He's available. I thought Ancelotti was a great candidate. I think he can handle the big characters, the big egos. He's been successful at Chelsea. He's been successful at Real Madrid. He's got the experience. He's got that cool, calm head, similar to what the type of character Wenger is. I think you say there's Simeone. You know, he sets his team up very, very strong through the middle of the park. You know, and he's been successful, hasn't he? The second currently in La Liga above Real Madrid. You know, I think he's been to 2 or 3 Champions League finals. Unfortunately, lost to Real. But there's several. There's 3 or 4. There's Vieira. There's Arteta. You know, I don't know what Arsenal are thinking. Are they thinking somebody long term? Are they thinking somebody that can come in and get success almost immediately? I don't think that would be too wise, because I'm not too sure where they've got a group there to do that. So it'll be interesting to see which way the board actually go, what type of manager that, you know, they decide to choose.
John, when the draw was made, I kind of had this weird sense that the Atletico Madrid wasn't the worst draw that they could have had. I mean, maybe they've only got one chance of beating Atletico Madrid, and that's in a one-off cup final, and that's obviously not really going to happen. So I just felt that if they had Marseille or Salzburg, both of those teams would have come technically as underdogs, but they're the sorts of games that Arsenal have in recent years had a bit of a struggle against in European competition. Is there hope now that Atletico arrive and they have Costa, it seems, back from injury, and even worse, Griezmann in absolutely brilliant form?
Well, it's a difficult game. Of course it is, because Atletico Madrid are a strong team. But I think Arsenal only have one way of playing. I think they've got to... Arsenal are constantly on the attack. They can't defend. They can't sit on the 18-yard line and soak up pressure all night. They'll get beat. Arsenal have always been a team that get on the front foot, look to create chances, you know, play wide, get the ball wide. They can't play through the middle of this team because they're too strong. You know, with Gordon, you know, marshalling their you know, the central area of their defence. Gamero, Griezmann, Torres, they've got some really good forward players. They're very entertaining in the middle of the park. They can play, they can defend. But for me, I fancy Arsenal to win the game tonight. I really do. I think if the crowd turn up and get behind them, if they can put in a similar performance like they did against CSKA Moscow, where they hammered them 4-1 going on 7. You have Aaron Ramsey breaking into the box from late. You've got Lacazette, you'll have Mkhitaryan, Iwobi. These players, it's just a case of whether Mustafi and Koscielny can defend strongly. But at home, I think tonight, if Arsenal are going to get through to the final, they'll need a positive result tonight. I mean, a 2-goal advantage to take away to Atletico in a week's time or whenever the second leg is, because it'll be difficult away from home. As you saw against CSKA Moscow, they went 2-0 down. It could have been 3. As it happens, Welbeck came up with a great goal, made it 2-1, and then Arsenal cruised then through to the semi-final. So they can't take, you know, a 0-0 or a 1-1, because I think it'll be very, very difficult. They'll probably get beat in Atletico Madrid in Spain. So in my view, they need to win tonight, and to do that, they need to start on the front foot, be creative, defend strongly, because I think they'll have the majority of the ball this evening at the Emirates, and it's just all about how they go about it.
Yeah, it'd be a fitting fairy tale ending to the Wenger career to win finally a European trophy, but we all know, John, sport doesn't really do fairy tales, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you know, I think, you know, it's people are talking about now whether he was pushed or whether he's decided to call it a day. Listen, it's all irrelevant now. It's his last few games in charge of Arsenal. It would be wonderful if he could win the Europa League. There's still a long way to go, of course, 2 semi-finals and a final. You know, so it would be fantastic for him personally. It would be great for the Arsenal fans. And what a way to leave, you know, taking the club back into the Champions League. Obviously, that's the prize at the end of these 2 semi-finals and the final. So it would be brilliant. But sentiment in football is, you know, is few and far. It doesn't happen too often, but hopefully the gods will be shining down on Arsene Wenger and Arsenal over the next 2 semi-finals.
John, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Okay, boys. You're welcome.
Thanks, John.
John Hartson there. Sport doesn't do fairy tales, so what's more likely to happen is that it'll be a 7-0 drubbing over 2 legs for Arsenal.
You would hope not. I think I'd like for him to kind of get that legacy, as John is saying there, go out in a high, win a trophy. But it's a difficult one. Diego
Final is in
Costa
France
will
as well
tonight. In Lyon.
Mkhitaryan is out, by the way. Just he confirmed that.
They're a good side, Atletico. Very, very good side. So they're going to ask questions, and
they like this competition. They win it a good bit.
Yeah, and you'd fancy them. Like, you know, he talk about Mustafi and Kilshelny defence. That's been an issue. They've conceded a lot of sloppy goals throughout the season, so they've got to defend really well tonight.
All right, good stuff, Quinny. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Ger.
We're going to talk with Mike Carson about the NFL draft in just a moment, but first, here's Kevin Kilbane on why he thinks Liverpool will win the Champions League.
Both given Liverpool very confident about the second leg, but full stop in this tournament, regardless of who comes through between Bayern and Real Madrid, you're both giving them a huge chance. Kev, you think they're going to win?
I think Liverpool win the second leg. I think they will.
No, I mean the Champions League.
Oh, Champions League. Yeah, I do. I look at the both sides.
Benzema could be in here. Shoots, goes low, well saved.
Good save.
Sorry, go on.
Did well actually to get away, get himself free. I think Liverpool would prefer. I think they could hurt Bayern a lot worse. I think they could hurt Bayern more than Real Madrid. I do. I just think that they've just got ways to win games. Real. I think that's the only thing that's in my head. But in general, I think they'll beat them both. Whoever they get, I think they beat them both.
All right, it's one of the biggest days in American sport. It's the first day of the NFL draft, and I'm delighted to say Mike Carson is with us this morning to help us to preview it. Mike, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, Ger. Yeah, we're both all alone here. I'm surprised. You know, your desk got to be tilting to your right.
Yeah, I should get Kaepernick out actually. Now that you mention it. So Mike Lombardi said on the Ringer podcast last week that this is an event that is more watched than the final day of the Masters. Is that true?
Pretty much, because it's on a number of platforms at the same time. And if the NFL has their way, it'll be on even more next year, kind of like a presidential debate. It will be, all channels. And when they first came along and moved it to the end of April, which is about a month later than it used to be, and put it on 2 days of prime time television, it didn't seem like it would be a good idea. It was just stretching the process out. But what they've done is created an enormous amount of hype that just goes on and on and on. And so we've just spent the last month with people speculating and putting out mock drafts and, picking apart everything possible about these 21, 22-year-old guys, and in a sense, you look at their college tape and you come up with an idea of how good someone is, and then they go to the combine, they get measured, and a few guys turn in these amazing athletic performances, and they shoot up. And then you have 6 weeks or so where everybody just starts picking them apart, and guys start dropping down and moving around. And it's a great kind of space filler for what, the NFL is the shortest season in North American sports. They really want to make it a year-round thing, and they've done a great job of doing it.
Yeah, I think we should just, for anybody who is completely unfamiliar with this, just explain how this is one of the best things in world sport, because it allows the crappiest team access to the very best players, which helps to restore parity. When you think about the fact that the Eagles were picking early, the LA Rams were picking early over the last couple of seasons. I know the Eagles had to trade up to get their picks, but they've transformed their entire franchise on the back of getting a good player through the draft.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing, because all of these multimillionaire Buccaneer capitalists actually run the most communistic sports league in the world. You not only do you have the draft, but you also have a salary cap, and the way NFL salaries are structured, they're not guaranteed for the most part. Your guaranteed money comes at the beginning of the contract. So they're pretty much free to cut a guy when he's become unproductive or not a good value. So it enables them to build teams well. And because there's a salary cap on rookies, so you don't have to go out and bid crazy sums of money to get the best quarterback, say, in the draft with the number one pick, you then get a guy who's a bargain for the next 4 or 5 years because he's playing under the rookie salary cap. So it really makes this important to hit at the top of the draft, especially. Although the way most drafts work, and this one in particular, there's an awful lot of talent beyond the top, say, 10 or 12 guys. It goes probably into the third round where you'll get not even serviceable, but players who are not much below that level at a lot cheaper price.
One of the other things I think that adds to the intrigue is that whole notion of the salary cap. So you can as a fan, watch how well a club is run, and it's one of those things that separates it from football, for example, where Manchester City spend the money, Man United spend the money, Chelsea spend the money, and everybody else is kind of left scrabbling around.
Arsene Wenger doesn't spend the money.
Exactly, precisely.
I talked to Bob Kraft once when the Patriots were in London, and he owns the Revolution in the NASL. And I said, a lot of Americans are buying into the Premier League because they see it as being something that's undervalued and immensely profitable down the end of the run. And he just said, no, I wouldn't go into a league where there's no salary cap, because some idiot with a lot of money can go out and just buy himself a team and beat me at it. And Bill Belichick, his coach, general manager, is one of the guys who takes the long view in the draft and rarely wastes a lot of draft capital in order just to get a shiny piece he thinks will put them over for 1 year, because he's always thinking a few years in advance, which is why they have been so successful over whatever the Tom Brady era, that's 16 years.
You mentioned the Patriots. It's been a while since they've actually had a first-round pick for one reason or another. Obviously, Deflategate took a pick from them, and then they traded away a pick last year for Brandon Cooks. But this year, they have 2 first-round picks, and there is some speculation, some relatively informed speculation, that they're particularly interested in Lamar Jackson, who is generally considered to be either the first, if you like his style of play, or the 5th best quarterback in the draft this year. What's going to happen with the Patriots?
To be honest, I would be very surprised if they use the 2 picks to move up in the draft. When you look at what Bill's done, it's almost an even balance between moving up, standing pat, and moving down. But when he's got 2 picks like this, they have more pressing needs than a backup quarterback at the moment. The main one being a left tackle, and there aren't a lot of really good left tackles in this draft. I think at 23, if he sees that there might be a guy he could use, and if it's not a tackle, I would think it's a linebacker, he may well stay there, take that guy, and maybe trade that second pick, which is 31, to get a couple of picks in the second round extra, because at that point, like I said, there's a wide spread of talent at that point, unless he's really fallen in love with a quarterback. I can't see them doing that. I see him more likely to pick up a guy in round 3.
So just Josh McDaniels, who was leaving and then decided to stay after a meeting.
He's a great soap opera.
Yeah, amazing. It's been the best soap opera for a team who looked like the most stable team in world sport for a long period of time. So he actually had a private workout with Lamar Jackson down in Florida. So they worked him out twice. Does this matter, the amount of time, the amount of face time you have with a player in the build-up to the draft? Does that really matter in retrospect, or can we ever tell?
Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. You would think with 2 workouts that means they are actually interested, but they often will bring guys in for workouts as subterfuge or just due diligence to see if, the Patriots are really good at picking up other teams' discards. When someone decides a first-round pick is a bust, they'll go back and say, well, we had this guy in, and I think we can work with him. Again, Jackson, like you say, could well still, unlikely, but it's possible he would still be there at 23. More likely is if the Patriots want him, they would have to move ahead of the Baltimore Ravens, say. And that might not necessarily cost them their second first-round pick, in which case they might do it. And then they could trade that second pick to replenish whatever it was they lost. So it's fascinating, because you and I can speculate about this kind of stuff, but basically, most teams have made up their minds about what they want to do, and the only question is, what's the price they're willing to pay to do it? Some teams will happily sit there and take the best guy available. Some teams will pay a lot to get up to a spot to get the guy they think they want. And in this year's quarterback class, there's, as you say, there's maybe 6 guys who'll go in the first round. I can see why people would fall in love with one or another, but I don't see any of them as being automatic franchise savers.
I guess that's exactly where we are at the moment, though, where everybody feels like they have to risk everything to get a quarterback, because you've seen the impact that having a good quarterback has on Houston, for example, even in the short sample size that we had last year, where they did take a risk and they were rewarded, where Kansas feel like they can trade away Alex Smith playing the best ball of his life because they traded up to get Patrick Mahomes, and on a tiny sample size they've decided they're going to go with him this year. And you see the effect that Garoppolo had in San Francisco, where this thing is completely ruined, and now suddenly, well, actually, who knows? The future is unbelievably bright for San Francisco. So that's why all of a sudden, because I'm only kind of watching the draft properly over the last couple of years, it felt like there was a point where the best quarterbacks were like, you could probably get them in the middle of the first round because teams have been burned by reaching for quarterbacks. But then when Bortles went at 4, it was like all of a sudden, actually, people are going to start being aggressive and trying to get QBs again.
Yeah, and when you have 6 guys like this in a situation, it does become a sort of scramble. And the interesting thing is that all of the teams that most need the quarterbacks have stopgaps in place. They've all picked up a guy like Tyrod Taylor, say, in Cleveland, who could play for them this year. The Jets they picked up Teddy Bridgewater, and they still have Josh McCown, who could both play for them this year. Case Keenum is in Denver. He could play for them this year. So when we talk about guys who aren't ready, like Ryan Allen in particular, who's this big, really strong-armed guy, but obviously not ready to move in and start, you don't have to start him. And then it's a question of, can your coaches coach him up to be ready for year 2? Deshaun Watson, you mentioned, and most of us didn't really think he was ready to step in and run an NFL system based on his college play. Bill O'Brien, his coach, didn't think so, and started Tom Savage in the first week of the season. Savage lasted 2 quarters, and then Deshaun Watson came in and lit the place up. And hopefully he's recovered from his injury and he'll be able to do that again this year. But Lamar Jackson is kind of closer to a Deshaun Watson than, say, to Connor Wentz, say. And the worry with guys like that, who move around a lot, who can use their legs to make plays, is that they're going to get hurt. Robert Griffin got hurt, ruined his career, basically. Watson got hurt in his first season. And I think that's one of the things that teams look at Lamar Jackson and think, well, it's a little bit of a risk unless we can change our offense to keep him healthy.
Yeah, I think it's, for what it's worth, an underreported part of the Kaepernick narrative that he got really badly hurt and had 3 significant surgeries when he was out, and never really got the opportunity to come back from that. Just in terms of how this might play out tonight for people who are going to be watching in, it's the Cleveland Browns who are picking first. We don't know who they're going to pick. They've allegedly fallen in love with, at various stages, 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks.
Yes, depending on who you believe, all the insiders in Cleveland. And there are some reports that say that John Dorsey, the general manager, has locked himself in a room with the scouts, and they're still mulling on. They know who they want. If they don't know who they want at this point, they're just completely incompetent. And with 1 and 4, they almost have to take, if they really want a quarterback, they have to take him with number 1, because if they don't, they run the risk of not getting him. The Jets, for example, who traded up with Indianapolis at 3, might wind up with the 3rd choice guy. So, unless they're willing to move again, they must have a feeling of confidence about a number of people. And a lot depends on what the Giants do with the 2nd pick. But then at 4, the Browns will have a choice of Saquon Barkley, the running back from Penn State, or maybe Bradley Chubb, who's a pass rushing defensive end. And Barkley is the nub issue of the draft. He might be the best running back to come out of college since Ricky Williams in the pre-pot smoking days. And he's huge. He runs really fast. He can catch the ball. He can block, and he runs, obviously. So he's pro ready. But running backs are in some sense fungible. If you build your offense around a running back, you don't really have a huge success. You look at Adrian, say, for the last 10 years. Todd Gurley is there in St. Louis, and they've built an offense that he fits into really well. So I don't know what they'll do, if Barkley might slip a bit further, because there are a lot of other good running backs, not tremendous supreme talents like Barkley, but say 90% of Barkley or 80% of Barkley, who are going to be available all the way down through the draft.
The other thing is, if you pick Barkley in at 2 or 4, you end up paying him 20 million in the 5th year of his contract. Now, maybe in 5 years' time, you don't really care about that, but you are paying a huge amount to a running back, even as the salary cap increases at that point. So what do you think the Giants are going to do? Because ultimately, they've decided, it looks like they're going to keep Eli Manning, and yet this is one opportunity that they're definitely going to have to find a replacement for him, which they might not have again properly for who knows how long.
It's a good point. And they drafted last year a guy called Davis Webb out of California in the 3rd round, and Webb was a great fit for what I thought for what they were trying to do last year. But of course the coach is gone, they've got a new coach, and it might be a new system. They never let Webb play last year, so we don't have any idea of how they evaluate his readiness. And I think that's going to be the key point, because they really do need a replacement for Eli. Eli has been decidedly average the last couple of years. Now, you could argue that Eli becomes a little better than average if they can put together an offensive line for the first time in 5 or 6 years and protect him a little bit more, because he certainly has the weapons to throw to. So I honestly don't see them taking a quarterback at 2. I would not actually be surprised if they traded down and picked up another pick. The Giants' pick would be Bradley Chubb in terms of what the organization has done for the last 10, 15, 20 years. They've always liked defensive linemen ever since the Bill Parcells years. And he would make a lot of sense to me, although they haven't had a good running back in a long time either. So Barkley could be a choice there. And that would be a popular one, I think, with the fans in New York.
Whoever ends up signing Barkley is going to be... generally, you would assume is going to be unbelievably popular. Whether or not it's actually the right long-term decision, I can't see Bill Belichick ever spending the 2nd pick on Saquon Barkley or a running back for that matter.
No, I mean, I saw a couple of interesting things. It was something like 7 of the last 13 teams to go to the Super Bowl final had an undrafted free agent starting at running back. And one of the teams that had a number 1 pick, Indianapolis, with Joseph Adai, he was splitting time with Dominic Rhodes, who was an undrafted guy. So, it's not the key position it used to be in the NFL. And you can get a lot of running backs along the way. And it's such an interesting draft, because you have 6 quarterbacks that nobody agrees with, because the best player possibly in the draft is Barkley, but he's at a position that's more or less fungible, and also is also the shortest career of any position. It's the most injury prone position, and because you have a deep draft like that, I think you're going to see an awful lot of trading up and down in the first round, and it might actually make that 5-hour extravaganza at 3 o'clock in the morning worth watching.
One last point, right, and it kind of feeds into that. So the accelerated culture that we live in demands that everybody has been saying this is the most interesting draft of all time, potentially, and fair enough. I have nothing to compare that against, and I accept the bona fides of my media colleagues who are saying it. But it has been an incredible off-season in terms of the number of trades, the players who are being traded, the contracts that are being cut, even up to the very time that the Cowboys decided to get rid of Des Bryant. It's been a fairly remarkable off-season, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the precursor to an absolutely ridiculous number of trades and drama on draft night.
I think you're right. And I think teams are... It's almost a result, I think, or an influence of analytics, and teams have become much more conscious of financial value as opposed to just gridiron value for the players that they're getting. And it's always been a copycat league, and I think teams are understanding now that the shiny hood ornament approach to putting a football team together doesn't work as well as the Bill Belichick approach of finding a bunch of bargain guys who can hold the spot for a year or two, and you get the occasional big time player to join them and put you over the top. And if you coach well, that works really well. And the problem, I think, in the NFL is that there aren't enough guys who coach well.
Pick the number 1 pick for me.
The number 1 pick?
Yeah.
Cleveland, I think, take Darnold.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I wouldn't swear to it. Apparently Hugh Jackson, the coach, hasn't been involved in the decision.
A wise move, by all accounts.
Which just seems weird to me. But
Mike, good stuff. Great to have you back. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mike Carlson giving us some thoughts there on the NFL draft, which I was amazed to hear will have more viewers in the States than the final round of the Masters. That's pretty much all we've got time for. Just some breaking news is that 2 men have been charged in connection with the horrific attack on Sean Cox outside the pub across from Anfield. So 2 Italian men have been charged in connection with that attack. The attack obviously happened a little bit before kickoff, and he remains in a critical condition in hospital. 20-year-old Filippo Lombardi has been charged with violent disorder and wounding inflicting GBH, and 29-year-old Daniele Sciusco has been charged with violent disorder. They will both appear in court later on this morning. As I said, that's pretty much all we've got time for, and just a reminder, of course, that OTB AM is brought to you in association with Ayr, the home of Ayr Sport. You can get amazing live sporting content for free from Ayr Broadband. We've got a Burnley special coming your way at 12:30 this afternoon. Keith Andrews has spent the day with Sean Dyche, their Irish contingent, and Joey Barton. We've put it all together in a nice little package. Keith's going to come into the studio and present the Keith Andrews Show around about 12:30. It's going to be special. We'll see you back then. Good luck.
OTB
AM. In association with Ayr. Get Ayr Sport free with Ayr Broadband.